With regards to Old Testament miracles, I find them scientifically impossible and without
an arrogant cultural imperialist.
What happens when three atheists take on Christian apologist Cliffe Knechtle in a fiery debate about morality? Can we truly know right from wrong without God? Or does atheism lead to moral chaos? Watch closely. This one will leave you questioning everything.
evidence.
Okay, great. Great point. You're right. Miracles are impossible if you have the philosophical presupposition of naturalism. If only the material is real, if all of reality is matter and energy, then of course miracles don't take place. But if you allow for the possibility of a supernatural God, then it is totally reasonable that a supernatural God can change a law of nature that he created in the first place and create what you and I call a miracle.
If you were to, say, somehow fit every animal in the world 2 by 2 into a large ark, you would see evidence of migration. You would see changes in the DNA left in the soil. You would see fossilization of perhaps different remains that they left or eaten along the way. We don't see any mass migration like that. Alternatively, if you were to take the idea that the whole world was flooded, right, you would see different layers of animal skeletons residing at different elevations. I think one of the most common examples is they say the Grand Canyon has these striations, right? So as you see the striations, you see that different layers of sediment have been compounded on top of each other. If the case were that there was a flood, you would see the same animal skeleton, same remains, traveling up the side of it, because I assume that animals would try to escape the flood by climbing higher. Or you would see different deposition of different soils at different levels. However, we see that there's just different striations as expected of a world that occurs naturally, especially with sediment.
You must read any document and respect literary style. Paul preached the gospel to the whole world. Does that mean that Paul went to South America, North America, and Asia, and Australia? No, it does not. So the question is, was the flood literally universal, or was it a local flood? When I was in college, I had to read the Gilgamesh epic.
Yes.
The sad thing was that my professor mocked the idea of the flood in Genesis and used the Gilgamesh epic to do that. The mistake my professor made was, it's very possible there was a flood and different cultures struggled through how to communicate the flood. Isn't it fascinating that in a lot of ancient cultures, you do have a flood account? It's not just in Genesis. The Gilgamesh epic communicates crystal clearly that there was quite the flood. So to try and argue that no, there was not some great flood thousands of years ago is a little ridiculous. And then to insist that the Bible says the flood literally went around the whole world. No, there are many followers of Christ, deeply committed to the scriptures, who understand it was a local flood. I don't think that kangaroos hopped from Australia to Iraq to get on the ark. Okay? And so to demand that kind of thing from a text that's not being that specific, I don't think is intellectually honest.
Okay, so with regard to that being a local flood, if that was the case, you would also see the same result in that area. The evidence doesn't change, right? No matter what sort of flood you have, you would still see changes in deposition. Especially with regards to how things occurred in the Old Testament, you would see that people made large claims as to how old Noah was and other things. Calling Apostle Paul as someone you can rely on is not necessarily wrong per se. I don't say that he's not a good person, but I will say that he definitely had a stake in having the Bible be true, right? Because for every Christian, if the Bible is true, it validates their reason for being. Earlier you mentioned something about a culture of death and how atheism is a culture of death. However, if it was true that our lives ended here, wouldn't it be better in our lives to be better in this short time that we have on earth? Your impetus assumes that
all of your talking presupposes that good and better are real. What is good? Who defines good? Who defines better? If you're an atheist, what you have to acknowledge is it is relative, culturally relative, which is why Shirley Jackson in 1948 wrote the short story called The Lottery. It's about a small town.
I'm aware of The Lottery.
The Lottery, okay, and you know that Mrs. Hutchinson is stoned by her children.
Right.
Because she lost the lottery. So if you've read that short story, then you know what Shirley Jackson is trying to get at, which is your stinking cultural relativism is so bankrupt It's scary.
I don't think that was the point of that story.
Of course, the point of the story is evil is real.
I believe that the story went along the lines of they continue this tradition for no reason other than because the tradition was there. Because they were told
and cultural relativism is the answer, right?
No,
the reason that's done is that's what the culture tells you to do. In order for the crops to grow, you have to stone somebody every spring. And so Mrs. Hutchinson gets stoned because that's the belief of that culture. Our crops grow because someone is stoned every spring. That's what you've got to get to eventually if you're an atheist. Because there is no mind prior to the human mind who defines right and wrong, which means it's all relative. That's a culture of death, sir, flat out.
No, because we can assume that there are certain ways you can view society, right, that are better and good. For example, taking utilitarian...
Not better and good, they just are.
No.
You can't say they're better and good, otherwise you're a cultural imperialist. No. You're an arrogant cultural imperialist if you say, my culture is better than your culture.
I would never say culture, I would say social science.
Fine. So, if your social science is better than my social science, that is cultural imperialism.
No,
cultural arrogance.
We can quantify it, right?
So how do you quantify goodness?
So I would quantify goodness as the state of human being, of being happy, of having more choices.
Good.
And we can see
what makes you happy is different from what makes me happy.
I understand.
And it's different from what makes an Eskimo happy, and it's different from what makes a white South African happy.
I understand, but your ability to express that is the difference between people. So, for example, for me, living in a first world country, I have far more options to express myself in different ways as opposed to someone in Africa.
Yes.
So I can say that I am in a better state than they are because I have more choice.
Better.
I can
better.
quantify
That is cultural elitism. For you to sit back and say, my ability to express myself because I live in the West is better than your ability living in South America.
No,
that's ridiculous elitism.
So, for example, you're saying it's cultural elitism, right?
Yes.
However, if we gave them the resources, they would be able to choose it. So if they so choose to still live in a village like that, then yes, that is their prerogative, and they're in a better state.
Right.
However, for me, I define it in a certain way. That's my relative way of doing it.
But you better not say yours is better.
No.
You better just say
for
mine,
me,
I choose what I choose.
But hold up. The way I can define this is through social science. So for example, they don't have the resources right now to have that sort of life. They don't have the resources to live a life sort of like mine. I can say definitively, with regards to the money they make, that I make more money, or I am worth more money. I can definitively say that if you give
society... You have more money. You're not more valuable than a poor person just because they don't have as much money as you.
And I never mentioned that.
Oh, you live in a culture that's
human value. I mentioned monetary value. No, because you're deriding the culture itself. However, the culture itself is not saying that. So, for example, let's talk about...
You don't think any parts of the United States teach very clearly that your worth is dependent on your stock portfolio size?
Sir, with regards to monetary value, yes. But I find it very hard for people to say that one human is better than another human being solely based on the fact that they exist. And so, for example, let's take for example the Christian idea of homosexuality, right? So you believe that you should be loving and accepting. However, the Old Testament explicitly states that you're supposed to stone gays. Am I incorrect?
You are incorrect in your assumption that freedom, love, and tolerance are real if there is no God. And your whole argument about homosexuality is based on an emphasis on freedom, love, and tolerance. Fine, sir, but the basis of your argument there is based on God. That God has given us an ability to be free, that God has given us an ability to love, and that tolerance is a good virtue. And that is based on a theistic worldview.
It's not about freedom, love, and tolerance.
Your whole argument is based on your view of freedom, love, and tolerance.
No, let's take
and the reason you're pointing out that the Old Testament is wrong is because it is thwarting freedom, love, and tolerance. And my point to you is if you'll read the Bible clearly, you will understand the Bible is giving you the basis of freedom, love, and tolerance.
Sir,
it is not blasting that apart.
No, because assuming that I'm basing it on this sole idea of freedom, tolerance, and love is incorrect.
No, it's not.
It's about social
what you
science.
said.
It's about social science, right?
You were appealing to justice when you tried to say to me, how can you say that the Bible affirms value of a person when it says stone a homosexual? The whole context of your question is freedom, the value of a human being, rights, love, and tolerance are important. I agree with you, they are important. But the whole basis for them being important is they are gifts of God.
So For
Yes,
example,
that's
he didn't
correct.
let me finish. So in the Old Testament,
Yes.
with regards to that time era,
Yes.
it would have somewhat made sense for people to say stone the gays, with the context that in a society that was highly mobile and warlike, they would have needed a lot more children and a larger populace to fight. In that context, they could manufacture whatever reason it was for it, right? So
No,
in order
false.
to control society,
False.
you would
That
always
is
call
not
it
their
divine
thinking.
emperor. Yes, because you can see it in history.
No, you go back to
So for
Genesis
example,
2. That's the context, a good creation. And in Genesis 2, you read that God created our sexuality to be enjoyed between a man and a woman till death parts us. That's what they were referring to
right,
in the Old
aside
Testament.
Aside from calling to God, many societies use divinity as their reason for being. So in China, they called to a mandate of heaven to mandate that all societies had to follow the emperor. In Islam, they had a caliphate, and the caliph was the one
Yes.
who called from
Yeah.
Muhammad or whoever to do whatever.
Right?
Religion, in the context of Christianity, all the rules they set were mostly practical in the Old Testament as well as the New Testament, right? So Jesus said,
No,
with
false.
regards, why
False.
not? So for example,
the basis of morality in the New and Old Testament is not practicality.
in the Bible,
It is not
it's-
pragmatism. No, sir, it is
the
not.
way it's written in the Bible, right? It's made out to be given from God, right? Like for example, the Ten
Which is
Commandments.
different from pragmatism, sir.
No, but my saying
Theism is
that-
different from pragmatism.
No.
Basic fundamental point.
Right. From what I'm saying is that despite that, you can
Yes.
see that they're pragmatic for the time that they were in.
Yes, I can see how not murdering this man is pragmatically wise. The basis of do not murder is not pragmatism. The basis of do not murder is he is a human being created in the image of God. And if I denigrate him by murdering him, that is absolute evil.
I would argue that it's a different way.
Yeah.
By not murdering him, you allow a human being to go out and be productive in the world, to create both value and help other people.
You are a great Western capitalist. Bravo. I'm standing here saying Western capitalism is not the basis for his value. I'm insisting he's a human being created in the image of God. He has innate value that has nothing to do with the size of his bank account or his stock portfolio or his career potential. He's a human being created for a purpose, to love and worship God and to love and serve others. Part of the way he does that is by working and producing, which is good. But when he works and produces, the value when he comes home at night is not the size of his paycheck. The value when he comes home at night is he's a human being created in the image of God. If you're an atheist and there is no God, then you cannot say there's a moral absolute. Instead, you can say there are ethics that I create, there are ethics that cultures
Why
create.
couldn't you say that?
Because if there is no God, there is no mind prior to the human mind that defines what's right and wrong.
Why would that be the case?
Sorry.
If there is no God, there is no mind prior to the human
The only reason
mind.
why we have any morals is because we can speak. The only reason why you have a thought in your head is because you can speak. There's
not
nothing
true.
separating you from an animal is the fact that you can speak.
But if you're the one defining that, and I say, no, it's good to kill someone, who's right and why?
Me, because I'm just telling
Thank
you
you.
you're wrong.
That's the arrogance.
Why is that arrogant?
I'm not saying he's arrogant, but the thought there is arrogant.
Why is that arrogant?
If I say there is no God,
So it makes
and
you not
morality is
arrogant to say a
relative,
God
but that
maybe?
I say to
Why is that
murder
the
him
case?
is wrong,
That's
and I'm
madness.
right, and if you murder him, you're wrong, that's total arrogance.
Why is
Colonial
that
arrogance, personal
So is it
arrogance,
arrogant
whatever.
for you to say it's okay
But
to
it's still-
murder then? I don't understand what you're arguing.
That I'm right, I'm better, I'm superior, and your opinion's inferior.
So to think that not killing somebody,
He's
that
already
would be
insulting us.
arrogant
That
of
is true,
me to
but
think that
it
because
takes
I don't
time
believe
to
that God sent me that message.
No. For,
That-
here's the arrogance. The arrogance is morality is relative.
Sure.
The individual or the culture defines it.
Right, sure.
Guess what? I am right, you are wrong. My culture is right, your culture is wrong. That's the arrogance.
No.
That's the arrogance.
Hold up.
Is it not?
Okay, can I define my viewpoint?
Yes, define your
So,
viewpoint.
so if everybody has their own views on life, their own truths on life,
Yes.
and they continue to lead their lives through that,
Yes?
I believe everybody has the free will to choose their own path in
Yeah.
life. So how is that me projecting my values onto other people? Because I'm not
I
telling
didn't
them.
say that. But
Okay,
if you
sure,
do
then
that,
how is that arrogant
if you
of me?
do that, and then you tell me that my murdering him
I'm not saying
is
that.
wrong.
I'm saying that he can do whatever he wants to do.
Okay,
he has the free
and my whole
will
point is
to
you
go-
can't live that out. I am convinced that if I do murder him,
Yeah.
you're not going to look me in the face and say, well, Cliff, I understand that your culture
sure.
teaches you that murdering him is right, so it's okay, let's go ahead and murder him. I think you're going to live your life as if for me to murder him is really wrong. Now, if I'm wrong, tell me.
You're simply just saying that.
Am I wrong?
You're saying
Or
that
if I murder him, what are you going to tell me?
You literally have the free will to go and kill him.
Is it right if I murder him?
But you'll stop
Sure.
him because you will support a state that would imprison him for doing that.
Sure, but that's my prerogative, you know? Like, I
the
can't...
only thing stopping him from killing you is God.
But it's your prerogative because you think it's a moral, justification
but
to
that's
put him
not
in
my...
prison.
All right, start getting here. What do you
There's
think?
not some sort of arrogance or like whatever you like saying that...
Well, you're still imposing
Hold on,
prison
listen.
on him.
I think what he's trying to articulate is like y'all aren't really like hearing him. Is that you're saying that he's arrogant for doing his own thing. He's living
I
his
didn't
life.
say that.
That's literally
I
what
did
you
not.
said so many
I
times.
said when he tells me, as a moral relativist, that whatever I do is wrong, really wrong, that's the arrogance. It's not arrogant for him to have his own opinion.
Sure, okay, I'll
when he
accept
tells
that.
me that what I'm doing is wrong, that's when he's an arrogant twit.
Sure, you can use that. You can use those phrases for like, so you're like calling me an arrogant twit for thinking that in my values and almost everybody's values here that killing somebody is wrong and that
No.
I'm arrogant because these are my own views and they
No,
didn't
it's
stem
not
from
yet
that.
what I've said.
think, okay, so the terminology though.
What I've said.
So when we say moral absolutes, you can't get to the point of saying moral absolute. You could say subjective morality based off of my own. No, I'm not saying you. I'm just trying to decipher here between what's going on. So objective morals, subjective morals, and then there's in between the two. There's obligation morally from the objective morals, and then there's preferences and opinions. So that's the differences going on here. That's how we're splicing the two, rather than the arrogance that we're talking about.
I'm just talking about how there's no need for a higher power to instill those values in me. Because I've got society that I've grown
Objective.
up in. Which is relative.
Right.
Sure,
So again, splicing the two is very important.
I don't think there's anything wrong
So
with
Hindus, this isn't the case for Christianity, for example. This is the case for any transcendent order. So Hindus, Buddhists, Muslims, Christians, monotheistic, polytheistic.
Okay.
The argument is, if there is a transcendent realm that is outside of us, then there is objective morality, as opposed to what you're saying, subjective morality, based off of myself, or what you were talking about in terms of culture, or those in power. See the difference between the two? So which one is more durable, and where is there more evidence for either this position or that position? That's the case being made.
Okay, sure.
So do you understand what we're saying?
Yeah, that there's more evidence.
You articulate what we're saying now.
So you're telling me that there's more evidence to prove that there is a higher power that instills values in us.
Well, what's the evidence?
You're telling me that there is more.
What's the evidence?
I'm not saying there is. That's not my.
What is the evidence that I've been saying that points to God?
I couldn't tell you. Man.
All right, then let's
He's
make it
going
real
to
clear.
say the Bible.
When I murder him,
Like whatever.
will you listen? I'm answering your question.
Sure, bro.
All right, man. When I murder him, and you tell me, Cliff, that's absolutely wrong.
Sure.
You are appealing to a value of justice outside of him and me, outside of us.
Yeah.
And you're saying, Cliff, when you murdered him, you violated that value of justice.
Yeah.
The only way that value of justice can exist separate from us, separate from our culture, is if there is some type of God, some type of mind that creates and defines that value of justice.
No.
All right, then who defines the value of justice?
The law.
Then it's relative.
Sure.
Okay, listen,
What's wrong with that?
All right, I'll tell you what's wrong with that.
Yeah.
Dr. Martin Luther King wrote a letter from the Birmingham jail.
Okay.
And in this letter he writes, guess what, guys? Just because the great state of Alabama says that segregation is good does not make it right. Because there is a law above the law of the great state of Alabama, and according to that law, segregation is wrong. What was Dr. Martin Luther King appealing to?
Okay.
He was
I get
appealing?
it.
No, you don't, and you don't listen well. And you've misquoted me now 3 times. So please listen.
Dude, hang on.
No, you got to hang on, and you got to start listening more closely. What Dr. Martin Luther King was appealing to was a moral absolute value of justice that the laws of the state of Alabama were violating in promoting segregation. And Dr. Martin Luther King was writing his letter from the Birmingham jail to a group of white ministers who are basically saying, Dr. King, you need to respect the laws of the state of Alabama. And Dr. Martin Luther King was appealing to a law above the law of the state of Alabama. That law can only exist if there is some type of God.
Okay, so you're saying that because laws are malleable and because humans created them, that there are fallacies inherent in them. So we shouldn't take that as like a moral absolute thing, which is why laws can be challenged and laws can be changed. And those are things that we should respect and admire in our society that we are able to do. So I'm not saying that because it is the law, that's why I have these values. These values precede the law itself. The law only explicates exactly what we as a society find to be how society should live our lives. So it only acts as like a response to what society is feeling at the time. So if there's some change in there, we can definitely change those laws. And for what Martin Luther King said, I agree. He was practicing civil disobedience. But what I don't agree is that those morals that he is advocating against, those values have to be directly coming from God. I don't believe that.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
So people
But
can
you only
come
believe that because of your
No, people can come to
relativist view.
No, sure, you can call it relativism, whatever you want to call it.
No, it's not whatever you want to call it. It's relativism, sir.
It's just
You got to think clearly and define specifically.
Dude, I don't appreciate
Can I
you.
jump in?
All right, well,
Okay.
yes, ma'am, go ahead.
So I know what you're saying, that like if you're gonna have laws and you're gonna have morals and they have to come from something, and like I think societal morals for atheists or for non-religious people come from the societal values that stem from Christianity and religion, because that has majorly affected the way people live their lives. But that doesn't mean you have to believe in God to follow the same moral code that you follow.
That's for sure.
Like lots of people don't believe in God, but they're still perfectly moral people.
Yes.
Following the same moral code that you follow.
Correct.
That's
right.
That you think is based on God, but I don't believe in God. That's not based on God for me. That's just
Right.
based on
That's right.
morals.
And so all I'm asking you to do is be consistent with your worldview. If you believe there's no God, then live it out and realize that morality is relative. So don't tell anybody else how they should live their life, because morality is relative. It's that simple.
I want to give two quick examples real
Why
quick.
are you out
Out of
here
Notre
talking about
Dame,
lies?
sociologist Christian Smith recently did a study, pretty comprehensive study. Thousands of high schoolers, right? What generation is that? Not millennials, but Z. So Gen Z, 45% are relativists. 35%, he found, are strong relativists. So some of the interviews that came back with some of these high school students, two of them said that if there is ISIS who want to behead a certain group of people, or if certain people want to fly airplanes into buildings, that is okay, because that's how maybe they were raised, or that's part of their ideology. That is all right. What's true for them is true for them. What's true for me is true for me. So that's strong relativism. I think that type of thinking is dangerous. This lady was just talking about humanism. Humanism came out of Judeo-Christian faith, right? All sociologists talk about that. And so I don't believe that, I know atheists who are way more moral than I am, way better in terms of they give more of their money away. So that's not the claim out here,
Right.
and Christians who make that claim are totally wrong.
Yeah.
And the second one is, I think, the point that you were making earlier in terms of cultures. It's very important not to push our own cultural biases onto others. Another example is in the New York Times. A woman was honest. She's an atheist. She said she went down to different parts of Africa, and genital mutilation was going on with a lot of the women there. And she went down with a group of people, and they tried to make changes. But a lot of people in authority down there, especially the males in certain parts of Africa, were saying, that's just your own bias from your Western culture. Scram. She came back, wrote in the editorial of the New York Times, saying that very thing. I went down there with my own Western ethnocentrism, saying that this is wrong, when down there they were in agreement, even though it seems so wrong to us, genital mutilation, but they still said their definition of human flourishing is vastly different from ours, so she had to respect theirs. Then she went on to say, that's why actually I believe in transcendent moral objectivity based off of moral obligation that's true for all people groups. Just like Martin Luther King Jr. made that same